Hello and welcome. My name is Zaid. I'm an ethical hacker, a computer scientist, and I'll be your instructor in this course. In this course, I'm going to teach you ethical hacking from scratch. So I'm going to assume that you have no prior knowledge, and by the end of it, you'll be at a high intermediate level. So we'll start by teaching you how to set up a penetration testing lab and how to install the needed software so you can practice hacking safely. Once done, the course is divided into 4 main penetration testing sections. The first is the network hacking section, where you'll learn how networks work, how devices communicate with each other, and how to exploit this method of communication to control all the connections around you, crack Wi-Fi keys, and gain access to Wi-Fi networks, whether they use web, WPA, or WPA2, and intercept data to capture usernames, passwords, chat messages, or anything that anybody does on the same network. Once done with this, we'll move to the gaining access section, where you'll learn how to gain access to servers and personal computers. So first, you'll learn how to gather comprehensive information about your target, discover vulnerabilities, and exploit them to gain full control over the target system. Not only that, but you'll also learn how to generate undetectable backdoors and use social engineering to deliver them to your target as a fake update or as a PDF or an image or any other file that they might be interested in. You'll also learn how to spoof emails so when they're delivered to your target, they appear as if they're sent from a friend, from their boss, or from any address that they're likely to interact with. Once done with all of this, we'll move to the post-exploitation section, where you'll learn what can you do with the access that you gained in the previous sections. So you'll learn how to interact with the file system, how to execute system commands, record keystrikes, open the webcam, and even use the hacked computer as a pivot to hack into other computers. Once done with all of this, we'll move to the website hacking section, where you'll learn how websites work, how to gather comprehensive information about a target website, and how to discover and exploit a number of dangerous vulnerabilities that allow you to gain full control over the target website. At the end of each section, you'll learn how to secure systems and secure yourself from the discussed attacks. Now, before we dive into the course content, I'd like to give you a teaser or a taste of what you'll be able to do by the end of the course. So this is going to be one example that's based on one topic that's covered in one subsection of the course. Now, because this is a teaser lecture, I'm not going to explain the technical aspect of how am I doing this, because I'm going to teach you how to do this as you go through the course. For now, just sit back and enjoy this lecture. And after this lecture, we're going to dive into the course content, where you'll learn how to do things like this and much, much more. So in this video, I'm going to give you an example of hacking this Windows computer from this Linux machine. So in this example, I'm going to use a program called Beef, which is a browser exploitation framework. I'm going to launch it from here. And the way this works is it uses a JavaScript code to hook a target computer, and then once a computer is hooked, we'll be able to run a number of commands. Now, to do that, I'm going to use a man-in-the-middle attack to automatically inject the hook code for Beef. So I'm going to use a tool called man-in-the-middle-f, and I'm going to do an ARP spoofing attack, and I'm going to give it my network interface, and I'm going to give it the gateway. And I'm going to give it the target IP address, which is the address of the Windows machine. Then I'm going to tell it that I want you to inject a JavaScript URL, and I'm going to give it the location where the hook code is stored. I'm going to hit enter. And that's it running. Now, I know this looks very complicated. You don't know where I got the options from. All of this looks confusing. But again, don't worry about that. We're going to talk about this and go through this step by step, so it'll be very easy for you. Right now, all you need to understand is this program is going to inject the hook code, so the code that allows Beef to hack into that computer. into the browser of the target person so that the code will run without the person even knowing. So I'm going to go to my Windows machine. I'm going to run the web browser. And I'm just going to go to any website. So I'm just going to go to bing.com. Now, if we go back to the Kali machine, you'll see that we have the IP address of the target person under the hooked browsers. And if we click on the Commands tab, you'll see a large number of categories with commands that you can run on the target computer. Again, we'll talk about that later in future videos. What I'm interested in is a plugin which allows us to show a notification bar on the target computer. And what I'm going to say in that notification bar is I'm going to say that there is a new update. Click here to install it. So what this is going to do is it's going to show the target person that there is a new update. And once they install that new update, I'll hack into their computer. To do that, I'm going to have to use a backdoor. Now, I've already made a backdoor that's not detectable by antivirus programs. I'm not going to show you how to do that now, but in the course, you'll learn how to do that. So right now, I'm just going to say where I stored the backdoor, and I called it update.exe. So that's it. That's all done. I'm going to click on execute, and that will execute it for me. Now, before I go and run the update, I'm going to listen for incoming connections so that I can connect to the target computer once they try to update their computer. So again, I'm going to explain why we need to do this and how to do this in future lecture. Right now, I'm just going to do it very quickly. And once we do that, if we go on the target machine, you'll see that their Firefox is telling them there is a critical update, and you need to click here to install that update. I'm going to click it. And you can see that it's downloading an update file for me. I'm going to save it. Now that's downloaded for me. So if I go to my downloads, just to show you what the file looks like, you can see that it looks like a normal file. It has a nice icon. If we run it, we'll actually get an installer that will update Flash for us. But at the same time, this is going to execute my backdoor at the background. Don't worry about this. I'm going to teach you how to make your Trojans or your evil files look and function just like any other file. So you can have a picture, a PDF, or an installer like I have in here that works like a normal file, but at the same time, when it gets executed, it'll execute your evil code in the background. So now, even though that the target person is happy, they think they're installing an update for their Flash player. If we go back to the Kali machine, you'll see that we managed to get a reverse session from the Windows machine. So I'm going to interact with that computer, and now I'm inside it. So I can do so many things with the target computer. I basically have full control over that computer. And we're going to talk about all the things that you can do in the post connection section of this course. What I want to do now is I want to show you how to access the webcam of the target computer. So we're going to use a plugin that comes with Meterpreter. So I'm just going to do webcam stream. I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, I managed to turn on the webcam of the target computer. So this is actually a webcam that's attached to the Windows machine. And right there, you can see me, and I basically hacked into the Windows machine. I can do anything I want on the Windows machine. And I can also turn the webcam. I can inject a keylogger. I basically have full control over that machine. Now, again, this is just an example of one attack that we're going to use. We're going to do so many more attacks like this, and all of them are going to allow us to gain full control over the target system. So don't worry about how to do this attack. Don't worry about the commands. Don't worry about all of that. This is just a teaser, a simple taste of the things that you'll be able to do by the end of the course. Now, as I promised you, this course is going to be highly practical, but I also promised that I will not neglect the theory. Now, what we mean by hacking is being able to gain access to a system that you're not supposed to have access to. So, for example, logging into an email account that you're not supposed to have access to is considered hacking that account. Gaining access to a remote computer that you're not supposed to have access to is hacking that computer. Reading information that you're not supposed to be able to read, again, is considered hacking. So you can see that there is a large number of ways to hack into a system, and the word hacking can refer to a number of things, but the main concept is the same. Gaining access or being able to do things that you're not supposed to be able to do is considered hacking. Now, there are three main types of hackers. We have the black hat hackers. These are the bad people that hack systems illegally in order to steal money or to achieve their own illegal goals. The second part of hackers are the white hat hackers. So this is us. These people use the same techniques used by the black hat hackers, and they also hack into systems, but they only hack into systems that they have permission to hack in order to test the security of these systems. And finally, we have the gray hat hackers. These are a mixture of the two. So they'll hack into any system, even if they don't have permission to test the security of the system, but they will never steal money or damage that system, and in most cases they'll go ahead and tell the administrator of that system. But what they do is still illegal because they test the security of systems that they do not own or do not have permission to test. Now, one big question that people always ask is, why hacking? Why teach or learn hacking? Well, hacking is an existing industry. There are lots of job opportunities for ethical hackers, for people like us who would go ahead and test the security of systems to make sure that these systems are secure and not vulnerable to black hat hackers. There is actually a huge demand for ethical hackers these days because of the increased amount of hacking attacks. So we hear on the daily, big systems and big companies are getting hacked. Not so long ago, Uber got hacked and information of more than 56 million users were exposed. So companies like Uber, Facebook, and Google, they hire hackers in order to try and hack into their systems and tell them where the weaknesses are so that they can fix it. They also have bug bounty programs where they literally ask all the hackers around the world to go ahead and try to hack into their websites and with their web applications, and if they could, they will pay them a bounty for the bugs that they find. Now, as I promised you, this course is going to be highly practical, but I also promised that I will not neglect the theory. Now, what we mean by hacking is being able to gain access to a system that you're not supposed to have access to. So for example, logging into an email account that you're not supposed to have access to is considered hacking that account. Gaining access to a remote computer that you're not supposed to have access to is hacking that computer. Reading information that you're not supposed to be able to read, again, is considered hacking. So you can see that there is a large number of ways to hack into a system, and the word hacking can refer to a number of things, but the main concept is the same. Gaining access or being able to do things that you're not supposed to be able to do is considered hacking. Now, there are three main types of hackers. We have the black hat hackers. These are the bad people that hack systems illegally in order to steal money or to achieve their own illegal goals. The second part of hackers are the white hat hackers. So this is us. These people use the same techniques used by the black hat hackers, and they also hack into systems, but they only hack into systems that they have permission to hack in order to test the security of these systems. And finally, we have the gray hat hackers. These are a mixture of the two. So they'll hack into any system, even if they don't have permission to test the security of the system, but they will never steal money or damage that system, and in most cases they'll go ahead and tell the administrator of that system. But what they do is still illegal because they test the security of systems that they do not own or do not have permission to test. Now, one big question that people always ask is, why hacking? Why teach or learn hacking? Well, hacking is an existing industry. There are lots of job opportunities for ethical hackers, for people like us who would go ahead and test the security of systems to make sure that these systems are secure and not vulnerable to black hat hackers. There is actually a huge demand for ethical hackers these days because of the increased amount of hacking attacks. So we hear on the daily, big systems and big companies are getting hacked. Not so long ago, Uber got hacked and information of more than 56 million users were exposed. So companies like Uber, Facebook, and Google, they hire hackers in order to try and hack into their systems and tell them where the weaknesses are so that they can fix it. They also have bug bounty programs where they literally ask all the hackers around the world to go ahead and try to hack into their websites and with their web applications. And if they could, they will pay them a bounty for the bugs that they find. As I mentioned, this course is going to be highly practical. Therefore, you will need a lab, a place where you can practice and experiment with the things that you're going to learn in the course. Not only that, but having a lab is essential for hackers or pen testers, because let's say you discovered a new attack or you want to experiment with a new attack, or you learned something new online and you want to test it, then the perfect place for you to test this and practice hacking is a hacking or a testing lab. Now, to create a lab, you just need a number of computers with different operating systems, and you'll need a number of networks if you're testing network attacks, and if you're testing website attacks, then you will need to install websites on these computers. Or you can do all of this inside your computer, inside one machine, and install everything else as virtual machines. And this is what we're going to do. So let's say you have your computer right here. This is your main computer that you use every day to check your emails or even to watch this course. This computer might be running Windows, OS X or Linux. It doesn't really matter. It can run any operating system. You can keep all the programs that you love and like and install a virtualization software such as VirtualBox. A virtualization software allows us to create a number of virtual computers inside your main computer. So we can have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 computers all installed inside your main operating system, inside your main computer. The really cool thing about this is you will not need a number of computers. You can do everything inside a single computer. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a hacking machine. This is going to be the machine that we will use in order to hack into other machines. We're going to install Kali Linux on it, and we'll talk about what that is later on. And we're going to have 2 target machines. These are machines that we're going to try to hack into and practice hacking against. One of them is going to be running Windows, and the other one is going to be running an operating system called Metasploitable, and we will talk about that once we get to it. Now, it is very important to understand that you will not lose any functionality when you install an operating system as a virtual machine. You can use that machine exactly as if it's a real physical machine. So the really cool thing about using virtual machines, first of all, you're not going to lose any functionality. Second, all the machines are going to be isolated. So as we go through the course, we're going to be trying to hack into these machines, and we might actually break one of them. But that's fine. It will not affect your host machine. You will be able to easily fix this and go back to a snapshot of when the machine was working without affecting your main computer. The other cool thing is that you'll be able to have a number of different versions of each of these machines, and you'll be able to change the configuration easily, change the network settings, or switch between different states of these machines, and so on. So, by using virtualization, you will not lose any functionality, but you will gain so many cool features. And the main thing to keep in mind is your host machine, your main computer, will never be affected. It's completely isolated. And if we break any of these machines, nothing will happen to your precious computer that you use every day. And this way, you can always use your host machine for daily use, for checking emails, watching the videos, doing whatever you do normally, and then use your virtual machines for hacking and practicing the attacks. And this is what I actually do. So you can see I have my host machine running OS X, and I never use this for hacking. But right here I have VirtualBox, and as you can see I have a number of operating systems installed on it, and I can literally start any of them by selecting the one I want and just click on start. Now don't worry about this, I will show you how to install these virtual machines as we go through the course. But what you need to do right now is download and install VirtualBox, this program. So you can download it from this page. I'm going to include its link in the resources. And like I said, you can install VirtualBox on Windows, OS X, or Linux, so it supports all operating systems. Just pick your operating system from here, download the relevant installer, and install it. Installing it is very, very simple. All you have to do is literally double click the installer, click next, 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 and it'll install it for you. Once you start it, you'll see a program similar to this, but you will not have any virtual machines here, so it will be empty. And I will show you how to install all of these machines as we go through the course. One more thing to do as soon as you install VirtualBox is to download and install the extension pack. This will give you better compatibility, and it'll allow you to use USB devices on the virtual machines. So you'll be able to use a USB mouse, USB keyboard, and USB wireless adapters. Again, downloading and installing the extension pack is very, very simple. There is only one file. It's always the same file for all operating systems. It's the same for Windows, for Linux, for OS X. You just have to click on the download link in here. Once you download that, I already have it downloaded, so I have it right here. And this file will only work if VirtualBox is installed successfully. So first of all, install VirtualBox from these links right here, like I said. Once you download it and install it and can see a window similar to this without these machines right here, we'll see how to install these later. Then download the extension pack from here. You'll have its file similar to this file, and only then you can double click this file and it will automatically open in VirtualBox. As you can see, it's telling me that I want to install the extension pack. It's giving me the version, which is the same version as the version of the VirtualBox that I downloaded. It has to be the same version, otherwise it will not work. I'm going to click on install. We're going to agree to this license. I'm going to put my password. And as you can see, it's telling us that the extension pack is installed successfully. So now we can go ahead and install virtual machines in VirtualBox. Now that we created our virtual machines, it's a really good idea to take snapshots of them. A snapshot allows you to store the state of the current virtual machine. So it allows you to go back in time or go forward to a certain state after you go back. So you can think of it as bookmarks. For example, now we can take snapshots of our fresh installation of the operating systems. And in the future, if we update or configure something or break something, you can literally just go back to the fresh install or go back to factory settings if you want to call it. Then, if you did something there and then you wanted to go back to your updated system, then you can go back to the updated system as well. So you can literally take a snapshot whenever you want to store the state of the machine, and then you can go back and forth between these states. Now I'll show you how to do that. I have Kali Linux right here, the one that we installed, and it's very easy to create a snapshot for it. All you have to do is just go on the snapshots here and click on the camera icon. Then it's going to ask you to call this snapshot something. So I'm just going to call it fresh install. And I'm just going to give it a description saying it's a fresh snapshot with no updates. It's always a good idea to give a good name and good description so that in the future you can actually remember what the snapshot stand for. So now that I'm done, I'm just going to click on OK. And now you can see that we have the current state. So whatever you do in here, you can update, you can install programs, you can install libraries, and then if you break something or if you ever wanted to go back to the fresh install, you can just come back, click on the fresh install and restore. So let's see now. I'm just going to go back to the details as normal, and then we're going to start our virtual machine. I'll just show you an example now. So let me just create a new directory in here. So let's imagine that you actually updated the system. Now in the future, we're going to talk about updating the system. And I'm going to tell you that when you update, there is a good chance that some libraries, some programs will not be as up to date as the libraries that will be installed. And then these programs might start giving you issues. Now, if you had the issues, you can put them into discussion and then I'll help you with them. But some cases, I'll tell you that you need to go back or downgrade to the older version without the update. So all you'll have to do is just get back to the fresh installation to your fresh snapshot. So now I've just created a new file just to show you that once you actually go back, everything will go back to the way it was before the changes that you made. So I'm just going to turn off Kali. And now if we go back to the snapshots, you'll see that we have our current state. This state has been changed, so it's a changed state. Now let's say that you updated and the update was successful, so nothing was broken and you are happy with it. So what you should do is you should just come in and click on the camera icon again to create another snapshot. And we're going to call this one updated system. And then you can just put the date if you want to. And then I'm just going to put the description updated with no problems. So I'm going to click OK. And you can see that we have two snapshots. We have the first one, which is our fresh install. And then we updated our system and we have an updated snapshot of an updated system. So now let's say that after you updated and you thought everything is okay, you are using the machine and you have problems, so you wanted to go back to the fresh installation. All you have to do is just click on the fresh install. And you can see that the restore icon right here, just click that. And now it restored me to the fresh installation. So now if I start the Kali machine, you'll see that the new directory that we created will disappear. Now, as you can see, we're back to where we were without the new directory, without anything. So we are actually back to the fresh installation of Kali, to when we actually took the snapshot. So now I'm going to show you another example. So let's say you went back in time and you went back to your fresh installation, and then for some reason you wanted to go back to your updated state to see if you can fix the issue. If I suggested the solution, or if you read the solution online and you want to go back and fix the issue that you had after the update, or for any other reason, maybe you just wanted to go back to a different state. It wasn't an updated state. I'm just giving an example with the update. So if you want to go back to a future state, you can still do that. So all you have to do is just again click on the updated, click on the restore. And we don't want to create a new snapshot from the current state because the current state is the updated state. So we're going to restore this, start the machine, and you'll see that we'll be back to the updated state to where we had the new directory created. So we're actually going to go back in the future now. And as you can see, now we have our test directory. So we're back to the state where we updated the system. So again, as you can see, the snapshots can be really useful. They can allow you to store bookmarks or states of the operating system. So you can actually have different configurations and you can switch between them as you want. Now, throughout the course, we're going to be using a number of penetration testing tools. You can go ahead and install each of these tools manually, or you can do what most pen testers do, including myself, and save time and effort and use an operating system designed for hacking. We're going to be using an operating system called Kali Linux, and it's just a flavor of Linux based on Debian, and it comes in with all the programs and the applications that we need to use pre-installed and pre-configured. This means that we can just install this operating system and then start learning or hacking. There are two options to install Kali. You can install it as a virtual machine inside your current operating system, or you can install it as a main machine, as a main operating system. Throughout the course, I'm actually going to be using it as a virtual machine because using it as a virtual machine works exactly the same as installing it as a main machine, because it will be completely isolated from your computer because it's only going to run inside VirtualBox. So if you break it or if you mess things up, it's very, very easy to fix. It's very easy to go back to other snapshots, other configurations, and also you won't lose any functionality by using it as a virtual machine. That's why I always use it as a virtual machine. And in this lecture, I'm going to cover how to install it as a virtual machine inside VirtualBox. Now I'm going to be doing the steps on a Mac OS X computer, but these steps are exactly the same regardless of what operating system you use. So if you're on Windows or on Linux, you just have to download the VirtualBox version of your computer, and then the steps shown in this lecture are exactly the same after installing VirtualBox. So I'm going to include the download link in the resources of this lecture, and I have it already opened in here. All you have to do is just scroll down. Make sure you click on the Kali Linux VirtualBox images, not on the VMware, and then download the version of Kali that's compatible with your system. So if you have a 64-bit computer, download the 64 bits. If you have the 32 bits, download the 32 bits. Now one click on this will start the download for you. If you're using Internet Explorer or Edge browser, then you're going to have to right click and save target as. On Chrome and Firefox, you can just click the link. Now this is downloading for me, and I'm going to stop it because I've already downloaded it. So I already have it downloaded in here. And as you can see, you should get a file with a .ova extension. So you have the name followed by .ova in here. So to install this in VirtualBox, all you have to do is literally just double click the file. And as you can see, I get a window which will allow me to import this virtual machine. Now I'm going to keep everything the same for now, and I'm just going to click on import. Now that's it, the virtual machine is ready to be used. Now before I start it, I want to show you how to modify some of its settings. So we're going to click on it. Then we're going to click on the settings in here. Now depending on the host operating system you're using, the layout of VirtualBox might be slightly different, but using it is exactly the same. So make sure you follow the steps that I'm gonna do right now, and it should work on all operating systems, whether you use Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X. So the first thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to System, and I'm gonna modify the amount of RAM it has. Now depending on how much total RAM you have on your computer, you can leave this at 2 if you want, but 1 GB is enough for Kali. I usually leave it at 2 because I have 16 gigs of RAM, but if you have less, 1 GB is enough for it. Also, if you come here on the processors, you'll see that by default I have 2 processors assigned to it. Again, I have 8 CPUs, so 2 is not gonna cause too much pressure on my computer. If you have less, 1 CPU is enough for Kali. Now, we're gonna go to the network settings, and we're gonna set this to use a NAT network. Now sometimes when you set this to a NAT network, you won't see a network name in here. If you don't, please check out my link in the resources and it will show you how to create a NAT network. For me, it already has a NAT network, so I'm gonna keep it on this one. And what this setting basically does is it's going to create a virtual network where my host machine, which is my Mac OS X computer in here, is going to be the router for this network, and then all the virtual machines are going to be clients connected to this network. So they're going to get internet connection from my host machine, and at the same time all of my virtual machines will be connected to a virtual network. This is very handy because my virtual machines will be able to communicate with each other. We can use one of them to hack into the other. We can use it to test network attacks and much more. So it'll first allow my virtual machines to have internet connection. It'll also allow them to communicate with each other. And it'll do all of this through a virtual network. It will not use any of your wireless adapters or any of your wireless cards. It'll create a virtual Ethernet network. So as far as the virtual machine is concerned, they're going to think that they're connected to a network through a wire.
Now, if you're on VirtualBox 6 and have a screen with high resolution, you need to go to Display and set the scale factor to 200%, because otherwise the virtual machine screen will be too small. But only do this if you have a screen with a high resolution and if you're using VirtualBox 6. Otherwise, keep this option the way it is. Now, we're done with this. I'm going to click on OK. And we can start this virtual machine like any other virtual machine. We just click on it and we click on Start.
Now I'm going to click inside the virtual machine and hit Enter. And we are inside the virtual machine.
Now, if you followed everything that I did so far, started Kali and got stuck at a black screen, so if you did not get the screen that I have right now, then don't worry about that. This is a common issue, and I've included a link in the resources of this lecture that shows how to fix this issue. You can access the resources of this lecture or any lecture by clicking on the resources icon on the top left of the player. If you follow all of the steps shown in the link and you're still stuck at this issue, or if you're getting a different issue, then please post this issue in the Q&A section and we'll respond to you within 15 hours and help you to fix this issue.
Now it's asking us for the username, and the default username is root, so ROOT. And then it's asking us for the password, and the default password is the reverse of that, which is TOOR. And that's it. Now I'm inside my virtual machine. Now, since we installed this using the ready image, we can just go to View, Full Screen, and we'll be able to go in full screen, and the screen will resize automatically to the size of our screen. Now, note in here, you see that I have a network icon appearing in here. And if I click it, you'll see it looks like I'm connected to a wired network. As you can see in here, it says wired connected. So Kali thinks it's connected to a wired network because we set this machine to use a NAT network. So if I open my browser in here, you'll see that I have internet access. So that's it. That shows how to install Kali Linux as a virtual machine. Don't be intimidated by this new operating system. We're going to go through the basics and we're going to use it a lot. And it's actually going to become very easy for you to use. Also, like I said, you won't lose any functionality when you install Kali Linux as a virtual machine. It's actually better to install it as a virtual machine because it's completely isolated from your computer and it'll be very easy to fix if things go wrong. Keep in mind, installing this on different hardware and different computers might show you some errors and some issues. So please, if you have any errors, just add them in the discussions and I'll help you resolve them.
One more thing. If Kali feels too slow or laggy, then please try giving it a few minutes, because usually when you start Kali, it automatically starts checking for updates. This uses quite a bit of resources, which would slow down the whole system. Also, it goes without saying, if your computer is not very powerful, then you should close any unused applications before starting Kali to free up some resources. But as you can see and as you'll see throughout the course, I'm using it with 2 gigs of RAM, 2 CPUs, and it's running very smoothly. And like I said, you can even get away with 1 gigabyte of RAM and 1 CPU.
The first penetration testing section in this course is going to be the network hacking section. The reason why I chose to start with this, because everything, if you think of it, is connected to a network. So whether your target is a personal computer, whether it's a server, whether it's a company, or even if it's just a website, all of these systems are actually connected to a network. Literally, when you just connect to the internet, you're connecting to a network because the internet is just a really, really big network. So it is very important that you understand how networks work and how devices communicate with each other before we actually move into the next sections. So this section is actually going to be divided into 3 subsections. In the first subsection, we're going to talk about all of the attacks that you can do before connecting to a network. So you literally just have a computer with a network interface, possibly a Wi-Fi adapter, and we're going to see what can you do now before even connecting to anything. In the second subsection, I'm going to show you how to crack Wi-Fi keys and gain access to Wi-Fi networks, whether they use WEP, WPA, or WPA2. Once you have the access, you can move to the third section, which will apply for both Wi-Fi and wired networks. All of the attacks that you will learn in the third subsection apply whenever you are able to connect to the network, once you're able to gain access to the network. And here is where the real fun starts, because you're going to learn a number of powerful attacks that will allow you to intercept the connections in the network and capture everything sent in it, including usernames, passwords, URLs, chat messages, and so on. Not only that, but you'll also be able to modify data as it's being sent in the air. So you'll be able to control requests, serve people fake updates, inject evil code into the pages that they load, and so many other cool things. So everything in the third section will apply for both Wi-Fi and wired networks. Now, before we start talking about network hacking, you need to have a basic understanding on how networks work. Now, we all know that a network usually contains a number of clients connected to each other, and clients usually connect to a network in order to share data or share a resource. A really good example of a resource that we all have connected to networks in order to access is the internet. So we connect to Wi-Fi networks and even wired networks all the time just to access the internet. Now, all networks, whether it's Wi-Fi or wired, work on the same principle. They have a device that is considered a server. Now, in many cases, for example, in your home network, this server is your router. This is also referred to as an access point. Now, this router or server or access point is the only device that has access to the resource. So none of these clients have direct access to the resource even after connecting to the network. The only way they can access the resource is through the access point. So let's say, for example, you're client number 1 and you connected to your home network over Wi-Fi or over Ethernet over a cable, and then you opened your browser and you typed google.com. What happens is your computer will send a request to the access point asking for google.com. The access point has access to the resource, which is the internet in this example, so it's going to go and look for google.com. It will receive google.com and it will forward that response to your computer, and as a result, you will see the website loading on your browser. So if you actually go to your router at home and look at it, you'll see at the back it's connected through a cable to the wall, and this is how it's getting its internet access. Therefore, it is the only device in your network that has direct access to the resource, And none of your computers, none of the computers connected to the network can access the resource or can access the internet without the router, without the access point. So the only way for all of the connected clients to access the resource is to go through the router. Now the data is transferred between the clients and the access point as packets. So you can think of all of these arrows as a series of packets being transmitted between the client and the router as requests and responses. Now in Wi-Fi networks, these packets are transmitted in the air. Therefore, if you have a wireless card and you're within range, you'll be able to capture all of these requests and responses. So basically, you'll be able to see anything that any computer connected to the same network as you does on the internet. Because they will have to send all of this data to the access point, and because they're sending this data in the air because you're in a Wi-Fi network, you'll basically be able to capture these requests and responses, and you'll be able to see the URLs they visit, the usernames, the passwords they enter, the chat messages. Anything they do on the internet will be sent as packets, and therefore you'll be able to capture it and analyze it. We'll talk more about that and more about how networks work as we go through the course. But this is enough to get you going through the next few lectures so that you can sniff data, analyze it, and start launching some cool pre-connection attacks. In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to connect a USB device to a virtual machine. As an example, I'm going to be connecting a wireless adapter to my Kali machine. But the same method can be used to connect any USB device. Now, as mentioned in the course requirements, you need a wireless adapter for the cracking section of this course. So these are the lectures where we're going to show you how to crack the passwords for Wi-Fi networks. Other than that, you can do everything else in the course without a wireless adapter. What I mean by a wireless adapter is a USB device that connects through USB to your computer, and it allows you to communicate with wireless networks. Now, most computers and laptops come with a built-in wireless card. The only problem is, first of all, you can't access built-in wireless cards from a virtual machine. Also, even if you can, so even if you install Kali as a main machine, the built-in wireless cards are not good for hacking because we need a powerful adapter that supports monitor mode and packet injection. And we're going to go into what each of these mean. But basically, the built-in wireless adapter does not support these modes and can't be used for hacking. That's why I recommend powerful wireless adapters. They're listed in the course requirements, and I'm going to list them in the resources of this lecture, and you can connect them to Kali like I'm going to show you right now. So I already have VirtualBox open, and you just want to click the machine that you want to connect the adapter to. We're going to go to its settings. We're going to go to ports. We're going to go to USB and make sure that USB is enabled. And you want to pick the USB option that is used by your adapter. So it's either USB 1, 2, or 3. And for the adapter that I have, it uses USB 2. Then you want to come here to the plus sign and click on it. Now you'll see that I have a number of devices that I can attach to the Kali machine. Now I still haven't connected the adapter. So first of all, I'm just going to have a look on the available devices. Then I'm going to connect the adapter. And I'm going to list the devices again. I did that because we're assuming that I don't know the name of my adapter, because the name that you'll see here is the name of the chipset that's used inside the adapter. So it's not the brand name that you see on the adapter itself. So when I click on it now, you'll see that I have a new entry called Atheros, and this is actually my wireless adapter. It's an Alpha AWS 036NHA. So I'm going to click on it. That's it added here. I'm going to click on OK. And that's the adapter added to Kali. Now, before starting my virtual machine, I'm going to physically disconnect my wireless adapter, and then I'm going to connect the adapter once Kali fully loads. Now I'm going to start it. So I'm going to put my username, which is root, and my password, which is TOOR. Okay, now Kali is fully loaded. I'm going to go and physically connect my wireless adapter. And like I said, I usually do this just to avoid any conflicts. Now, once the adapter is connected, you want to make sure that it's attached to Kali. And to do that, we're going to go to the devices menu. So we're going to go all the way to the top. We're going to go to devices. We're going to go on USB. And we're going to make sure that this adapter right here is checked. Now, sometimes it might not be checked for you, so click on it to check it. For me, it's already checked, so I'm not going to click it. And to confirm that the adapter is connected, we can just go on terminal right here and type ifconfig. This command lists all the interfaces that's connected to the machine. And as you can see now, it's showing an adapter called LAN 0, which is the wireless adapter. So if you have this in here, that means your adapter is connected. If you don't, then ask in the discussions and I'll help you through this. Some adapters are not compatible with Kali, so that could be the issue, or the issue could be something else. Also, now if we go here on the top right, you'll see that I have a Wi-Fi option, which I can use to connect to Wi-Fi networks. Now, we don't need to do this because I showed you how to set up a NAT network, and Kali already has internet access through this NAT network. So we only need the wireless adapter to hack into other networks to crack their passwords.
Okay, now that we had a quick overview of Kali Linux, I want to spend some time talking about the Linux terminal. So you can access the terminal through this application right here. So if we click on that, it will open the terminal window for us. And as you can see, all it is a black screen where you can type commands. Now, the Linux terminal is actually very, very powerful because it can be used to do anything that you can think of, really. A lot of the applications in Linux that have a graphical interface were command prompt programs first, and then people made a graphical interface for it. So a lot of the time, maybe the graphical interface will be buggy or crash, and the terminal program will still work. Also, a lot of the penetration testing tools do not even have a graphical interface. A lot of them can only be used throughout the terminal. Not only that, but in many scenarios, you might only have an SSH or a command prompt access to a machine. So you need to know how to use this command prompt in order to achieve your goals. So throughout the course, we're going to be using the terminal a lot, and that's why I want to spend some time just showing you the basics of it and making sure that you're going to be comfortable using it. Now, the basic idea is you type a command and the result will be displayed for you on screen. So let's have a look on a very, very simple command, which is pwd. Now, this command prints the current working directory, hence the name pwd. So if I hit enter, you can see it's printing /root, which means right now I am in the root directory. So basically I am in here. This is the root, it's home. So if I do ls, which is a command to list all the directories and files in the current working directory, we should get all of these directories that we see in here. So if I hit enter, as you can see, I can see all these directories in the current working directory. Now, another very useful command is the cd command. This command allows us to navigate into another directory. So for example, let's say I want to navigate into the downloads. All we have to do is type cd, followed by the name of the directory that I want to navigate to. So I'm going to type downloads. Now if I hit enter, I should be inside the downloads now. So if I do pwd to see my current working directory, you'll see that it's saying I'm in root /downloads.
So if I do ls here, it should show me all the directories and files inside downloads. So if I do enter, as you can see, I have a directory and a file in here, and these are the exact same files that you'll see if you double click the downloads here. Now, if you want to go back one directory, so similar to pressing the back button in here, all you have to do is do cd, again the command to change the working directory, followed by ... And now if I do pwd, you'll see I'm back in root. And if I do ls, you'll see all the directories and files in root. So that's all good. And there's actually a huge number of commands that you can use. So I'm going to include a link in the resources of this lecture of all the Linux commands that you can use. You don't need to know them by heart. We're actually going to be using a lot of them throughout the course. So you're going to naturally learn them as you go through the course. Now, if you are using a command and you're not sure about how this command works, you can just use the man command to display the manual of this command. For example, we've used the ls command here to list the files and directories in the current working directory. But if I do man followed by ls, this basically means I'm requesting the manual of ls. So I'm asking, how can I use the ls command? So if I hit enter, you'll see I'll get a screen similar to a text file. And basically, it's given me a lot of information on how to use the ls command. So you can see that it's telling us that this command will list the directory contents. You can see the way it works by typing ls, followed by the options, followed by a file if you want to run it on a file. You can see a longer description of the command. And then you can see all the options and the arguments that we can use with this command. Now, in Linux, most of the time, the options will always follow the same syntax. So you either use -letter or -- a word to specify the argument. For example, in here, the -a and -- will ignore entries starting with dot. So if you keep going down in here, you'll see all the options and arguments you can use with the ls command. And we have another example here. We have the -l, which means it's going to use a long listing format, which will display more information about the files in the current working directory. So let's have a look on that. I'm going to press Q to exit this, and then we're going to do ls as usual. And since we read the manual, we know we can do -l to see more information about the files. And if I hit enter now, you can see I'm still getting the same directories, but it's also showing me the permissions, the users, the date created, and so on. So you can use the man command on any command you want, not only on the ls. So you can use it on the pwd, you can use it on the cd, or any other command, and it'll show you full description or the manual page of how to use this command. Now, I'm going to clear the screen by typing clear. And the next thing that I want to show you is the --help. So this is something that you can use again in almost all commands and all programs in Linux. So you can just type the program name or the command name followed by --help. As you might think, this will show you a help message telling you what this command is or what this program is, the arguments that it takes, how to use these arguments, and examples at the bottom. Now, another useful thing with the terminal, so I'm going to clear this again, is the arrows. So you can press up to go up to see all the commands that we executed before, and again you can go down to navigate between the commands that you executed previously. You can also use the tab for autocomplete. So again, let's do ls, and you can see all the files, and let's say we want to go into documents. So we can do cd followed by documents. You can type documents, or if you're lazy like me, you can just do doc and press tab, and as you can see, it's automatically completing the rest of the word for me. So this is something that comes very, very handy when you're using the terminal for a long time. Now, what I also want to show you is how to install programs in Kali from the terminal. So first I'm going to clear this. And the first thing that you want to do is update the sources where Kali can search and download programs from. So we're going to do apt-get update. Now apt-get is the name of the application that allows us to download and install programs. And we're saying update because I'm saying that I want you to update the list of all the programs that I can install. So I'm going to hit enter. And you want to make sure that you have internet connection when running this. And as you can see, it's telling me that it's done. And now we can go ahead and start installing applications. So the first program that I want to install is actually a terminal program, so similar to this one, but it allows us to have multiple terminal windows open in the same window. So in order to install a program through the command line, we're going to do apt-get, which is again the name of the program that allows us to install programs on the system. We're going to say that I want to install, and the program that I want to install is called Terminator. So very, very simple. First of all, we're typing the name of the command, which is apt-get. We're saying that I want to install, and the program name that I want to install is called Terminator. So I'm going to hit enter. And this is going to download and install Terminator for me. So you can use the same command to install any program that you want. You just need to replace Terminator with the name of the program that you want to install. Now I've already downloaded and installed this before, so it didn't ask me to confirm. But if you're running this for the first time, it might ask you to confirm whether or not you actually want to install this program. So all you'd have to do is press Y from the keyboard and hit enter. Now, as you can see, it's done. So if I go to my all applications in here and just type Terminator, you can see that I have it here. So I'm actually going to drag it and put it in my dock so I can access it easily in the future. So now I can just click it in here and that will open Terminator for me. Now this is another application that allows me to run commands. So it's exactly the same as this. So again, I can do ls and pwd. The only difference is with this one, I can actually right click and click on split horizontally, for example. And this will split the same screen into two screens where I can run commands at the same time. So I can have some commands in here and I can run commands in here. And then I can even split this more if I want, again, vertically or horizontally. And as you can see, I can have as many terminal windows as I want. And this will be very helpful in the future when we'll be running a number of programs and a number of commands at the same time. Okay, now that we have Kali Linux installed, I want to give you a basic overview of this operating system in this lecture so that you're comfortable with it, and we're going to be using it throughout the whole course, so everything is going to become easier for you as we go through the course. Now the first thing that I want to talk about is the status bar in here. So you can see we have an applications menu in here, and inside it you can see all the applications are categorized. So we have information gathering applications, vulnerability analysis, web application analysis, reverse engineering, and so on. So you can go on each one of these entries and just select any program that you want to run. And the next menu that we have is the places, which shows you the most common places in the file system. So we have home, we have the desktop, we have the documents, downloads, and so on. So you can access the places from here and then you click on home, or you can just click on the files icon in here on the left, and both of these will bring you to the home directory, which is actually the root directory. So it says home in here, but the actual location of this, if I do Control L, you'll see it is /root. So inside this, you can see we have our downloads, music, pictures, similar to the way that you'd have it in Windows and OS X. We also have the time in here, and in here on the right, we have more controls. So the first thing that we have in here is the workspaces. So Linux comes with multiple workspaces by default. Basically, what this allows us to do is we can have this desktop in here. For example, we can open the places and we can, for example, navigate to downloads and do some work in here. But if we go here to workplaces and go to the second one, you can see that I have an empty desktop that I can do whatever I want. And for example, I can launch Firefox in here. And then again, if I want to go back to the first workspace, all I have to do is click on here, click on number 1, and I'm back in here. And because I've already used up 2 spaces, the system is already creating a third empty space, so I can click on that, and as you can see, I'm in the third space where I can do more stuff. Now you can also navigate between the spaces by pressing Ctrl-Alt up or down to go up and down in the spaces. The next part of the status bar is this last part in here, and if you click on it, basically the first thing it'll allow you to do is control the sound. Next, you'll see your connections. So as you can see right now, and as I showed you before, this is showing up as if we're connected to a wired network because I configured this network to use a NAT network. If you have a wireless adapter connected to this computer, you should be able to see it here. If you don't see it, then follow the link in the resources of this lecture to see how to properly connect your wireless adapter or any USB device to a virtual machine. Now I should note, you can only use external USB adapters in order to access Wi-Fi networks from Kali. You cannot use the built-in Wi-Fi card. But Kali should have internet connection anyway because it is configured to use a NAT network, and as you can see in here, it's telling me my wired is connected. So if I actually go down to Firefox, I'll close this. And if I just go to google.com, you can see it is connected to the internet. So let's go back to where we were. And if we click here, we also have the battery settings, the user settings. You have this button to turn off the machine. This is to lock the machine, and this will show the preferences where you can modify the preferences of the machine. So you have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, change the background, change the languages, and so on. So you can spend some time getting familiar with this. It's very easy and very intuitive. Same goes to the file manager in here, very intuitive. Double click to go in. You can right click and archive and extract here to uncompress it. You can navigate throughout these files by clicking them, and then you have the trash here, which contains the deleted files. Now we also have the dock in here, which contains the favorite applications, and you can also access all the other applications by clicking on this icon right here, the show applications, and this will show you a menu with the most frequent applications, and then if you click on all, it'll show you all the available applications. When it comes to networking, you probably heard of the term MAC address a lot. So in this lecture, I'm going to cover what do we mean by MAC address, what it's used for, and how to change it. MAC address stands for Media Access Control. It's a permanent, physical, and unique address assigned to network interfaces by the device manufacturer. So whether you have a wireless card or a wired or Ethernet card, each one of these network cards come with a specific address that is unique to this card. So there is no 2 devices in the world that would have the same MAC address, and this address will always be the same to this specific device. Even if you unplug it from your computer, connect it to another computer, then this network device will always have the same address. So you might already know that the IP address is used in the internet to identify computers and communicate between devices on the internet. The MAC address is used within the network to identify devices and transfer data between devices. So each piece of data or packet that is sent within the network contains a source MAC and a destination MAC. Therefore, this packet would flow from the source MAC to the destination MAC. So, because this is a physical unique address to each interface, to each network device, and because it is used to identify devices, then changing it will make you anonymous on the network. Not only that, but the MAC address is often used by filters to prevent or allow devices to connect to networks and do specific tasks on the network. So being able to change your MAC address to another device's MAC address will allow you to impersonate this device and allow you to do things that you might not be able to do. So you'd be able to bypass filters or connect to networks that only specific devices with specific MAC addresses can connect to, and you will also be able to hide your identity. Now, changing the MAC address is very simple. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, I'm going to use the ifconfig command to list all the network interfaces available on my Kali machine. What I mean by network interface is any device that allows us to connect to a network. So an example is a Wi-Fi card or an Ethernet card and so on. So you can see, first of all, we have ETH0, and this is a virtual interface created by VirtualBox when we set Kali to use a NAT network. So you can see the interface name is ETH0. You can see it has an IP address because, like I said, it's connected to a network. So if we go here, we can see it's saying wired connected. So this is the interface that represents the wired network that Kali is connected to, which is actually a virtual NAT network. You can also see the net mask, the broadcast, and a really important piece of information, which is the ether. This is the MAC address of this virtual interface. Now you can see similar information for my other two interfaces, the LO and the LAN 0. The only thing is, you can see for both of these interfaces, we do not have an IP address. And the main reason for that is because none of these interfaces is connected to a network. Now LO is a default interface created by Linux, and LAN 0 is my real wireless adapter, so I can use it to connect to Wi-Fi networks. But if I go on the network in here, you'll see Wi-Fi is not connected because I actually didn't connect to any network, and that's why it does not have an IP address. Now this doesn't matter because what we want to do is to just change the MAC address, which again is shown here under the ether part. So similar to what you're seeing here for ETH0. Now, in order to change any of the values that you see in here, you have to first disable the interface. So, in this example, we want to change the MAC address. So that is represented by the ether, and the value is right here. So, in order to disable an interface, we're gonna do ifconfig, followed by the interface name, which is LAN 0 in my example, followed by down to disable it. Now, if I hit enter, you'll see the command runs with no errors, so it means that it got executed properly. And the next thing that we need to do is to change the option that we want to change. And in this example, we want to change the ether, which is the MAC address. So first we're gonna type ifconfig. We're gonna type the interface that we want to change one of its options. Then we're gonna type the option that we want to change. And what we want to change is the hardware address. So we're gonna do HW ether. Then we're gonna give it the address that we want to change the MAC address to. So for example, I'm gonna use 001122334455. Very simple command. We're doing ifconfig lan0 to select the interface that we want to change its option. We want to set the hardware address, and we want to set this address to this specific address. So you can use any address that you want following the same format shown here. Just make sure your address starts with 00. So I'm gonna hit enter, and again we don't see any error messages, so it means the command got executed properly. And finally, we just need to enable the interface because we disabled it by doing ifconfig lan0 down. So we just need to do ifconfig lan0 up to enable it. Now the interface is enabled, and if we do ifconfig again and look at the other part in here, you can see that it is changed to the MAC address that we specified. Now this is done and your MAC address is changed. Now you can go ahead and start using the interface, and it will appear to have this MAC address instead of its original MAC address. And like I said, this can be useful in so many scenarios.
Now keep in mind, the MAC address will revert back to the original one once you restart the computer, because we're only changing the MAC address in memory. We're not really changing the physical MAC address. But if your MAC address is resetting to the original one without restarting, then something is going wrong, and it's probably happening because your network manager is resetting the MAC address. Not everybody will face this issue, so I'm not gonna cover it in this lecture. But if you face this issue, if your MAC address goes back to the original one without restarting the computer, then check out the YouTube video in the resources of this lecture. It will show you how to fix this issue.
From the previous lectures, we learned the basics of how networks work. We learned that devices on the same network communicate with each other using packets. So regardless of what you do on the network, whether you're watching a video, whether you're logging into a website, sending chat messages, sending emails, regardless of what you're doing, all the data is sent as packets. Now in the network, devices ensure that these packets go in the right direction using the MAC address. So each packet has a source MAC and a destination MAC, and it flows from the source to the destination. So in this example, we have the client, it has this MAC, we have the access point, which has this MAC. And as an example, if this client wanted to send a packet to the router, it will set the destination MAC to the router's MAC address. Therefore, by default, each device only receives data that has the destination MAC as its own MAC address. But if you remember, I said in wireless networks, if you're within range, then you'll be able to capture all of this communication because these packets are literally sent in the air. So we can just capture them even if they do not have our MAC address as the destination MAC. To do this, we need to change the mode of operation of our wireless interface so that it operates in monitor mode. So let me show you what I mean. If I go to my computer here and run iwconfig this time, so we've seen ifconfig, which lists all the interfaces. We can use iwconfig to see the wireless interfaces only. And you can see we have LAN0 right here, which is my external wireless adapter. And you can see the mode of this adapter is set to managed. What this means is basically this is the default mode of all wireless devices, and what it means is this device will only capture packets that has the destination MAC as the MAC address of this device. So basically it will only capture devices that are directed to my Kali machine. But this is not what we want. What we want is to be able to capture all the packets that are within our range, even if they are sent to the router and even if they are set to another device. So to do this, we need to set the mode to monitor mode instead of managed mode. So, as usual, before you can change the options of your interface, you have to disable it. And previously, we've seen we can do that by doing ifconfig, the device name, which is LAN0 in my case, down. Then we can enable monitor mode. But before we do that, I'm actually going to run a command to kill any process that could interfere with using my interface in monitor mode. So the command that I'm going to run right now is not mandatory, but running it will actually give you better results when you come to running the attacks that you will learn as we go in the course. So this command is going to be airmon-ng check kill. Now you'll notice when you run this command, it'll actually kill the network manager that usually runs in here. So you'll completely lose your internet connection. But this is no problem because we will only need to be in monitor mode when we are running pre-connection attacks. So attacks that do not require us to connect to any network. So we actually do not need internet connection to run any of the attacks that require monitor mode. Now we're going to enable monitor mode. So we're going to do iwconfig, followed by the interface name that we want to enable monitor mode on, which is LAN0. We're going to say that I want to change the mode, and I want to change that to monitor. So very, very simple command. We're using iwconfig to change the mode. We're given the name of the interface that we want to change its mode. We're saying I want to change the mode, and I want to set it to monitor mode. Now if I hit enter, you'll see the command will run with no errors, which means the command got executed properly. And finally, we'll need to enable the interface, again similar to what we did when we changed the MAC address. So we just have to do ifconfig LAN0 up. That's done. Now if I run iwconfig again, you will see that the mode is set to monitor now. So basically, this interface now can be used to capture any packet that is within our range, not only the packets that are directed to this computer. That's why in the future, you'll see how we can use it to sniff packets, to analyze them, and even break into networks. So in the future, if I say use your interface in monitor mode, this is what I mean. You'll basically have to enable monitor mode as shown in here. Now, I've also included a YouTube video in the resources of this lecture to show an alternative method to enable monitor mode. Just in case you got errors with this method, or you tried to follow something that I do in the next lectures and it didn't work, then you can come back and try the alternative method. But if this worked and if monitor mode is enabled successfully, then you don't need to watch that video, you can just continue with the course. One more thing to keep in mind, not all wireless adapters support monitor mode. So for this to work, you need to make sure that your actual adapter supports monitor mode. There are a number of adapters that support that, and I've included another video, again in the resources, of me talking about wireless adapters, how to pick the best one, and which ones that I recommend and use when I'm testing the security of networks. Now that we have enabled monitor mode on our wireless interface, we are able to capture all the Wi-Fi packets sent within our range. Even if the packet is not directed to our computer, even if we're not connected to the target network, and even without knowing the key or the password to the target network. So all we need right now is a program that can capture these packets for us. The program that we're going to use is called AeroDump-ng. It's part of the AirCrack-ng suite, and it's a packet sniffer, so it's basically a program designed to capture packets while you're in monitor mode. So it'll allow us to see all the wireless networks around us, and show us detailed information about its MAC address, its channel, its encryption, the clients connected to this network, and so on. So let me show you how we're going to use it. First of all, you need to enable monitor mode on your wireless adapter as shown in the previous lectures. So if I go to my Kali machine and run iwconfig to list all the wireless devices on this computer, you'll see that I have an interface called Mon0, and this interface is in monitor mode. Now, depending on the way that you enabled monitor mode, this can be called LAN 0, it can be called LAN 0 Mon, it doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure you enable monitor mode using one of the methods shown before, and then use the name of the adapter that is in monitor mode when you run aerodump-ng. Now, to run aerodump-ng, we're just going to type the name of the program, which is aerodump-ng, followed by the name of my wireless adapter in monitor mode, which is Mon0, as you can see in here. So the command is very simple. We're typing the program name, which is aerodump-ng, followed by the name of my interface in monitor mode. If I hit enter, you'll see it'll start working, discovering all the wireless networks around me and displaying useful information about them. This program will continue working unless you quit it, and to quit this program, you have to press Ctrl-C from your keyboard. You can actually use Ctrl-C to quit any running program in your terminal. Now that we stopped the program, let's analyze the output so we understand what it's showing us. So first of all, if we look at this column, the ESSID column, it should be a little bit familiar to you. And basically, this shows us the names of the wireless networks around us. So if I just go to my Mac machine and look for wireless networks, you'll see the same names that we see in here displayed under the ESSID. Now, all of the other columns show us more information about the network name that you see in here, and this information will actually be very useful to us as we go through the course. The first column, the BSSID, shows us the MAC address of the target network. Next, we have the PWR, so this is the signal strength or the power of the network. Now, the higher the number, the better signal we have. So, for example, the network with the best signal right here is this one. Next, we have the beacons. These are frames sent by the network in order to broadcast its existence. So every network, even if it's set to be hidden, always sends these type of frames, basically broadcasting its existence and telling all the wireless devices around it that I exist, I have this BSSID, I work on this channel, I use this encryption, and my name is this. Next, we have the number of data packets or data frames, and these are the useful packets that we'll talk about later on once we get to the cracking section. This column represents the number of data packets that we collected in the past 10 seconds. Next, we have the channel, which is the channel that the network works on. So for example, this network right here, the test AP, works on channel 6. This network works on channel 1, and so on. Next, we have the maximum speed supported by the network. The encryption is a very important column, and it shows us the encryption used by the network. So we can see that the test AP network is using WPA. We can see we have a network that uses web. We can see this network right here is an open network, so it doesn't use encryption. We don't even need a password to connect to it. And we can see we have a WPA2 network right here. Cipher is the cipher used in the network. So we can see here we have CCMP, we have web, and we have CCMP again here. Auth is the authentication used on that network. And in here we can see it's PSK, pre-shared key, and MGT for this network. Now don't worry about the INC, the cipher, and the auth. We will talk about breaking into all these networks into WEP, WPA, and WPA2 in the gaining access section. And finally, you can see we have the ESSID section, which shows the name of the network. So this is what you see when you look for networks in your network manager. So that's it for this lecture. I just wanted to give you a quick look on how to discover all the networks around us using AeroDump-ng. Don't worry about AeroDump-ng too much now. We're going to be using it a lot in the next lectures, and you'll get very comfortable with using it as we go through the course. In this lecture, I'd like to talk about Wi-Fi bands. The band of a network defines what frequency it can use to broadcast the signal. This means it also defines the frequency that the clients or the computers need to be able to support and use in order to be able to connect to this network. The two main frequencies used in Wi-Fi networks are 2.4 and 5 GHz. Now, previously, when we used AeroDump-ng, we were only sniffing on the 2.4 GHz frequency. You can see, first of all, my wireless adapter is in monitor mode, Mon0 in here. So if I just do AeroDump-ng Mon0, you'll see that I can get the wireless networks around me. But you might have noticed that you won't actually see all the networks around you when you run AeroDump-ng. I'm going to Control-C this, and if I go here to my normal host machine, and it actually has a built-in wireless adapter, so it's not as strong as my alpha adapter. But if I look for networks, you'll see I actually have much more networks in here. And mainly, I have networks ending here in the name by 5G. Now, the network doesn't have to necessarily end in 5G, but here in Ireland, if a network broadcasts over 5 GHz, the service provider adds 5G to the network name. But we also have other networks broadcasting over 5G that don't end in 5G. But basically the main point that I want to talk about is I'm not able to see all the networks around me in here in AeroDump-ng. And the reason for this is because AeroDump-ng is only sniffing on 2.4 GHz frequency. So if you do this and you don't see all the networks around you, or if you're sniffing on your own network, but you don't see all the clients in your network, it's possible that your router is broadcasting over two bands, over 2.4 and 5 GHz. And if you're not seeing the router at all, if you're not seeing the network at all, like what's happening here for me, then the router is probably just broadcasting over 5 GHz. Now, this doesn't mean that your wireless adapter is not good. It just literally means that this adapter is not able to see 5 GHz frequency. It's just outside of its limit, outside of its reach. The main problem with 5 GHz is that there are a lot of wireless adapters that can see it and can communicate with it, but not many of them support monitor mode and packet injection. So you might see me and other people recommending wireless adapters like Alpha AWUS 036NHA. This is my most favorite wireless adapter. I use it all the time, even now. But the problem with that adapter is it doesn't pick up 5 GHz frequency. So it doesn't mean that that adapter is bad. It just means that it can't see 5 GHz frequency. Like I said, there aren't many wireless adapters that support 5 GHz, but I have an adapter here. It's Alpha AWUS 036ACH, and this adapter supports both 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz frequencies. It's not as good as the Alpha, but it does the job. Now, if you want more information about wireless adapters, check out the link in the resources. I'm not going to talk a lot about what wireless adapters do, but in this lecture, I want to show you how to sniff and discover 5 GHz frequency networks, and then so that you can use all the attacks that you've learned in my other lecture and in my previous videos with 5 GHz networks. So, the adapter that I'm using right now supports 5 GHz, but as you can see, I still can't pick up these networks. That's because I need to specifically tell AeroDumpNG that I want you to listen on 5 GHz frequencies and 5 GHz channels. To do that, all we have to do is just do AeroDumpNG, like we always do. And then we're going to use a new argument that we haven't seen before, and this argument is called band. And we're going to tell it that I want you to sniff on band A, and that's the band that supports 5 GHz frequency. And then I'm just going to give it the name of my wireless adapter in monitor mode, which is Mon0. So the command is very simple. It's very similar to what we've used before. And all we have to do is just type in AeroDumpNG, followed by the band. And the band that we want to use is A. And we're following that with our wireless interface. So I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, as soon as we hit this, I'm actually just going to do Control-C now because you can see the results. You can see that we got much more networks right now. And we have the 5 GHz network. So we have this network and this network that we weren't able to see. We have the Jameson Whiskey network as well. And basically we're able to capture all the networks that use the 5 GHz frequency.
Now what you can also do, let me clear the screen. You can specify multiple bands using the band argument. So again, using the same command, instead of just saying band A, we can do band A, B, G. And what this will do is it'll tell AeroDumpNG to capture data on both 2.4 and 5 GHz frequencies at the same time. So let me show you. So as you can see right here, we're capturing some 2.4 GHz networks and we're capturing 5 GHz networks as well at the same time. And we'll also be able to discover clients connecting to both bands. The only problem with using AeroDump like this is, first of all, you need a powerful wireless adapter to do this. Also, it'll be slightly slower than only sniffing on one band, because when you're sniffing on two bands, you have a lot of channels that AeroDumpNG has to hop on all of them and discover clients and networks broadcasting on these channels. So, if you want quicker results, then you're better off just specifying the band A when you want to sniff on 5 GHz frequencies and just not specify the band when sniffing on 2.4. But as you can see, you can just run the command like so with band ABG, and this way you'll be able to capture data sent over 2.4 and 5 GHz frequencies. Also keep in mind, in order to sniff data on 5 GHz frequency, like I said, your wireless adapter needs to be able to support this band. So simply adding the band argument will not work unless your wireless adapter can support and can sniff data on this band.
One more thing that I want to note, I've actually said this before, if you run AeroDumpNG against a network and you see some devices missing, then there is a high chance that these devices are connected over 5 GHz. So again, use the band A and then you should be able to see these devices.
In the last lecture, we've seen how to use AeroDumpNG to list all the networks around us and display useful information about them. Usually, we do this in order to see our target network, see the signal strength, see how far we are from it, and then start targeting this target network. Now, in this example, I'm going to assume that my target network is this one right here. This is actually the network that my host machine is connected to. And now that I have my target network and I have some basic information about it, let's see how we can run AeroDumpNG against this network only, not against all networks. And this way we'll be able to gather more information about it. So to do this, first of all, I'm going to have to write the name of my program, which is AeroDumpNG. Then I'm going to specify a specific BSS ID or a specific MAC address for AeroDumpNG
to sniff data from. So my target network has a BSS ID of this. We can see it here under the BSS ID. So I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to do -- BSS ID. And I'm going to give it the BSS ID that I just copied. Next, I'm going to specify a channel for AeroDumpNG to sniff on. Again, if we look under the channel column in here, we can see my target network is on channel 2. So I'm going to do -- channel 2. So now we're telling AeroDumpNG that I want you to sniff data on channel 2 and only from a network that has this BSS ID. I'm also going to tell AeroDumpNG that I want you to store all the data that you're gonna gather for me in a file. So I'm gonna say -- write, and then I'm gonna type a file name, and let's call this test. And at the end, as usual, I need to give it the name of my wireless adapter in monitor mode, which is Mon0 in my case. So, very simple command. Let's go over it one more time. We're doing AeroDumpNG, that's the name of the program that I want to use. I'm telling it that I only want you to sniff data from a specific BSS ID. Then I'm giving it the BSS ID of my target. Then I'm telling it I want you to only sniff data from a specific channel, and I'm giving it the channel that I wanted to sniff data from. Again, we can get it from here, it's number 2. Finally, I'm telling it that I want you to write all the data that you're gonna capture in a file that we're gonna call it test. And then I'm giving it my wireless adapter in monitor mode, which is Mon0. Now I'm gonna hit enter. And as you can see, unlike the last time, AeroDumpNG is only showing me one network in here. This is the network that I wanted it to sniff data on. And we can also see we have a completely new section right now. So when I ran AeroDumpNG in the previous lecture, you seen I only had the networks in here and I had nothing here at the bottom. But now you can see we have more entries in here at the second section of AeroDumpNG. And basically anything that you see here in the second section, these are the clients or the devices connected to this network. So right now we can see this network has 3 devices connected to it, and you can see the MAC addresses of these devices under the station. So you can see all of these devices are connected to the same network. So the BSS ID is still the same. This is the MAC address of the network. And under the station, we have the different clients or different devices connected to this network. We can also see the power. So this is the signal strength of each of these devices. We can see the speed. We can see the amount of data lost. We can see the amount of frames or packets that we have captured. And we can see if any of these devices are still probing for networks. So sometimes when you run AeroDumpNG against all networks, you would still see this section and you'd see that some devices are not connected and they're literally trying or looking for networks. So you'd see the name of the networks that they're looking for under the probe. Now, if I hit Ctrl+C, AeroDumpNG will quit, it'll stop working, but I should have new files in my current working directory that contain the data that we just captured. Because remember, when we ran the command, we used the right option in here to store the data in a file called test. So if I just do ls to list all the files in my current working directory, you can see I have 4 files. All of them start with test, but they all have different extensions. So we have a CSV, we have a netXML, we have a CAP, and we have a Kismet CSV. Now also notice that AeroDumpNG automatically appended -01 to each of these files. So in the future, when you go and try to use the capture file, make sure you append -01 to the file name that you specify in the command. Now, the main file that we're going to be using is the cap file, Again, this file contains the data that we captured during the period that AeroDumpNG was working on in here. And basically, this file should contain everything that was sent to and from my target network. So it should contain URLs, chat messages, usernames, passwords, or anything that any of these devices did on the internet. Because anything that they have to do will have to be sent to the router, as we've seen before. The only problem is, if you look at the encryption in here, you can see that my target network uses WPA2 encryption. So all of the data sent between the router and the clients is encrypted. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to use a tool called Wireshark to analyze the data. And don't worry about how to use Wireshark. We will talk about it in details later on. Right now, I just want to make sure that you understand the idea that now we're able to capture all these packets. The only problem is these packets are encrypted. So I'm going to do Wireshark to run Wireshark. And then I'm going to open my capture file. So I'm going to go to File, Open, and it's already in my root directory. So I'm just going to scroll down and select my test1 cap. I'm going to open it, and I'll just put this in full screen. And as you can see, if we click on any of these packets, you can see we really have no useful data. You can see everything looks like gibberish, and we can't read anything, even though these packets might contain usernames, passwords, or URLs. The only useful thing that we can see here is the device manufacturer. So we know one of the devices connected to the network that has this specific MAC address. So it's the one that ends with E8. And if we go up, we can see that it's this specific device. We know now it is an Apple device. So it could be an Apple computer, it could be an iPhone or an iPad. And this is actually my MacBook computer that is the host machine. Again, we can see we also have a device that's using a Huawei chipset. So this can be a phone, or it could be the router. And if you look at the MAC address here and compare it to the MAC addresses that we have here, you can see that this is actually under the BSSID. So this is the MAC address of the router. So now we know that the brand of my router is Huawei. So we can gather more information by opening this file in Wireshark, and we can kind of guess what computers are there and what operating systems they use. But this is not detailed enough, and the main problem with this is the fact that the network is using encryption. Now in the next section, we're going to be talking about how to break this encryption, and once we do, you'll see how we can see the passwords, the usernames in plain text, and you'll also see how we can map all of the computers on the same network, gather detailed information about them, hack into them, and do some really cool stuff. Now you should guess by everything that I said so far, if this network was an open network, if it was a network that does not use any passwords, then you would have been able to actually see all the URLs and everything that they do in here. But again, if you can't connect to the network without a password, then you'll automatically be at the post connection section. And in that section, like I said, we're gonna talk about some really cool attacks that you can do once you have the password or once you can connect to the network. So don't worry about Wireshark for now. I just wanted to make sure that you understand why encryption is useful and why it's used and why we can't see much now because we don't know the key. We will talk about Wireshark and all of that later on in the next section. Now, before leaving this section and moving to the gaining access section, where I'm going to teach you how to break the different encryptions and gain access to networks, I want to spend one more lecture talking about a really useful attack that still falls under the pre-connection attacks under this section. The attack that I want to talk about is the deauthentication attack.
This attack allows us to disconnect any device from any network before connecting to any of these networks and without the need to know the password for the network. To do this, we're going to pretend to be the client that we want to disconnect by changing our MAC address to the MAC address of that client and tell the router that I want to disconnect from you. Then we're going to pretend to be the router, again by changing our MAC address to the router's MAC address, and tell the client that you requested to be disconnected, so I'm going to disconnect you. This will allow us to successfully disconnect or de-authenticate any client from any network. Now we're actually not going to do this manually, we're going to use a tool called AirPlay-NG to do that. From the previous lecture, we know that this MAC address right here belongs to an Apple computer, and like I said, this Apple computer is actually my computer right here. And as you can see, this host machine is connected to this network right here, which is the same as the one that you see in here, and it actually has internet access. So if I just look for test, you'll see that I'm connected and I can look for things, I can use Google, so I have a proper working internet connection. Now, we're going to come back here and we're going to use a tool called AirPlay-NG to launch the de-authentication attack and disconnect this Mac computer from the internet. So we're going to type the name of the program, which is AirPlay-NG. We're going to tell it that I want to run a de-authentication attack. Then I'm going to give it the number of de-authentication packets that I want to send. So I'm going to give it a really large number so that it keeps sending these packets to both the router and the target device. Therefore, I'll disconnect my target device for a very long period of time, and the only way to get it back to connect is to hit Ctrl+C and quit AirPlay-NG. Next, I'm gonna give AirPlay-NG the MAC address of my target network. So I'm gonna do -A and give it the MAC address, which I'm gonna copy from here. Then I'm gonna use -C to give it the MAC address of the client that I want to disconnect. And the client that I want to disconnect is this client right here, which is the Apple computer like we said. So I'm gonna copy it and paste it here. And finally, I'm gonna give it the name of my wireless adapter in monitor mode, and in my case, it's called Mon0. So a very simple command. We're typing AirPlay-NG. This is the name of the program that we're going to use. We're doing --deauth to tell AirPlay-NG that I want to run a de-authentication attack. I'm giving it a really large number of packets so that it keeps sending the de-authentication packets to both the router and the client and keep the client disconnected. I'm using -A to specify the MAC address of the target router or the target access point. Then I'm using -C to specify the MAC address of the client. Finally, I'm giving it Mon0, which is the name of my wireless adapter in monitor mode. Now you can run this command like this, and in most cases it would work, but in very rare cases this command will fail unless AeroDump-NG is running against the target network. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my first terminal in here, and I'm going to run AeroDump-NG using the command that we've seen before. And I don't want to write anything to a file, so I'm going to remove the write argument. So I'm just doing a normal AeroDump-NG command. I'm literally just giving it the BSS ID of my target network, and I'm giving it the target channel. And then I'm just gonna hit enter. We've seen how to do this. We spent a full lecture on it. That's why I did it really quick. And then I'm gonna go back to the command that we wrote so far, and I'm gonna hit enter. Now, as you can see, AirPlay-NG, it's telling me that it's sending the de-authentication packets. And if we go back here and look up, you can see that I actually lost my connection and I'm trying to connect back. So obviously, if I try to look for anything, so let's say test2, you'll see I'll get stuck and nothing will load for me. So the only way for me to connect back is if I go back here, if I quit this by doing Ctrl+C, quit this again, and now my machine should be able to connect back and restore its connection. This is actually very handy in so many ways. It's very useful in social engineering cases where you could disconnect clients from the target network and then call the user and pretend to be a person from the IT department and ask them to install a virus or a backdoor, telling them that this would fix their issue. You could also create another fake access point and get them to connect to the fake access point and then start spying on them from that access point. And we'll see how to do that later on in the course. And you can also use this to capture the handshake, which is what happened in here actually. And this is vital when it comes to WPA cracking. And we'll talk about this once we get to the WPA cracking section. So, like I said, this is a small attack that can be used as a plugin to other attacks or to make other attacks possible.
Everything we've done so far can be done without the need to connect to the target network. Now, once we connect to the network, we can do so many cool things. We'll be able to gather so much more info. We'll be able to intercept the connections and see everything that the people send, whether it's usernames, passwords, URLs, or anything really. We'll also be able to modify the data, and you'll see all of this in the next section of this course. Now, if your target does not use encryption, then you can just connect to it. If your target is a wired network, then you can just use a cable and connect to it and move to the next section. The only problem is if your target is using encryption. So, in this section, I'm going to show you how to break that encryption and gain access to Wi-Fi networks, whether they use WEP, WPA, or WPA2. Once we get the key, we'll be able to connect to the network and you'll be able to do all of the things that you'll learn in the next section, in the post-connection section.
So, from the previous lecture, we know in order to crack WEP, we need to first capture a large number of packets. This means that we'll capture a large number of IVs. The IVs, because they are short, they will be repeated. Therefore, we'll be able to use a tool called AirCrackNG to run statistical attacks and crack the web key. So we're using AeroDumpNG to capture the data, and we've seen how to do this before. Then we're using AirCrackNG to analyze this data and break the key. Let's see how to do this in practice. So I already have my wireless adapter in monitor mode, and it's called Mon0. I've also already run AeroDumpNG to list all the networks around me. And as you can see, I have only one network using WEP. This is called TestAP3. And this is my actual network that I use every day. I just configured it to use web to make this lecture. The main reason why I'm targeting the network that I use daily, because like I said, for this to work, we need to capture a large number of packets. And therefore, we need a busy network, a network that gets used constantly to capture a large number of packets. If the network is idle, then the process is a little bit complex, and I will cover that in the next lecture. So for now, let's focus on the simplest form, which is how to break into a busy network. So I'm going to copy the BSSID of this network, and I'm going to run AeroDumpNG against this network only. So I showed you how to do this before. I'm going to do AeroDumpNG. I'm going to do --BSSID to specify the BSSID of the network. Then I'm going to do --channel to specify the channel of the network, and we can see it's running on number 1. And I'm going to do --write to store everything that we capture into a file. And let's call this file basic web. And then I'm going to specify my wireless adapter in monitor mode, which is Mon0.
So we run this command before in the targeted sniffing lecture. All we're doing is we're running aerodump-ng against a specific network with this MAC address, with this channel, and we're storing everything in a file called basic web. I'm gonna hit enter, and as you can see, aerodump-ng is working against my target network. And if you notice, you'll see the data in here is increasing really fast. So this is something that I told you I'll talk about it later when we were talking about aerodump-ng, because I didn't want to talk about IVs at that early stage. So basically what you see under the data column is the number of useful packets that contain a different IV that we can use in order to crack the key.